Welcome back to Everyman Prepping, and today we're going to talk about another death blow to the US dollar and the petrodollar. The story was basically swept under the rug by mainstream media, didn't get any play, but it's a huge deal to the US, the hegemony of the US, and to the financial stability of the United States. And that was the deal brokered by China, which is key here, for the relations to begin again between Iran and Saudi Arabia. This will lead, like I said, to the further demise of the petrodollar and the U.S. control of the world currency. It can open up trade from Saudi Arabia and their council over there with other nations they're friendly with through Iran into China and Russia, which basically is the two biggest countries in the BRICS group. Iran's looking to join, Saudi Arabia's looking to join. Heck, we even just talked about Mexico looking to join BRICS. So, China is exerting their influence. There's nothing more that China would want than the demise of the US dollar, the death of the petrodollar, and financial collapse over here. So it was a huge deal that was done. Didn't get much talk, so I wanted to talk about it here. So subscribe to the channel, like, share, comment on the video. Let me know what you think about this. And you can also ring that bell to get notifications when more videos come out. Well, let's get started here. So it says the Iran-Saudi rapprochement, basically starting up relations again, peace relations and all that stuff, will deal a death blow to the US dollar. I totally agree with that because it's already happening. It's just going to further get that snowball going downhill. And it says here that this, the Iran-Saudi relations starting back up, unlocks the Gulf Council's cooperation's trade potential with Russia and China. So what is the Gulf Cooperation Council? Well, it's a group. Let's go to a map here really quick. It's the group that consists of Saudi Arabia, Oman, United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Kuwait. These countries over here basically. It's a group, and it's in the capital here, is where the headquarters are in Riyadh, of Saudi Arabia, and it's just a group allied financially. It's just one of those. It's like a G7 or something like that. And what it basically is saying here in this article, so that group of nations opens up their trade potential with Russia and China. How they can do that? It's also a way to avoid sanctions. When there's sanctions put on Russia and China, the U.S. can enforce it over naval routes, because we have a huge navy and, we can stop ships, we can board ships, we can enforce sanctions. But if you use overland routes, you can avoid a lot of sanctions. And this is what it's going to do. And you're going to see how that's going to work in a minute. It says its wealthy members of this council can now tap into two series of Iran transitioning mega projects in one fell swoop. And these Iranian deals are land routes into Russia and China for trade. It says with the north-south transit corridor connecting them to Russia and the China Central East Asia economic corridor will do the same into China. So let's talk about what those things are. We got little maps to show you here. So this is the red line right here. As you can see, it's the north-south transit corridor. Actually starts in India, another BRICS country. Not a coincidence, by the way, that this is basically a BRICS thing to fight against the US dollar. So here we are in Iran. So, Saudi Arabia is right here, and their council of these countries. They can easily just overland route their goods. They go into Iran. It goes up through Azerbaijan, Astrakhan, into Moscow. I have Mexico on the brain because just talked about them joining BRICS. Anyway, from Iran, you can get into Moscow, St. Petersburg, and get your trade going that way. Russia can avoid sanctions because the standard sea route, can't be blocked by the U.S. Navy. If the U.S. is going to block goods flowing on land, they basically have to fly planes over enemy territory. Most likely not going to do that, although it is in World War III, so who knows. So Saudi Arabia can join up on this and get stuff into Russia. Big benefit to Saudi Arabia. Here's the Chinese one. This is the China Central and West Asia Economic Corridor, kind of like the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative, but starts off here in Turkey. As I've said many times on this channel, Turkey is supposed to be in NATO. I expect Turkey to leave NATO, not really a NATO ally, more of a BRICS ally, and they're looking to join BRICS too, by the way. Anyway, starts there, but as you can see, it goes straight over here into Iran, then through all the stands. Turkmenistan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, goes through all the stands, ends up in China. Once again, Saudi Arabia's down here. They can either shoot right across the Persian Gulf. The U.S. Navy is not going to stop any goods traveling across the Persian Gulf. That would be a huge war starting right there. They're not going to bring aircraft carriers and destroyers into the Persian Gulf to stop trade. That's not going to happen. So they can get trade through there or through land, get on this, and get their stuff to China. Two huge openings for Saudi Arabia, from all their commodities, and back and forth. They can take in technology, other investments from Russia and China the other direction. So it says, the bloc's de facto Saudi leader, we're talking about the Gulf Council there, has been prioritizing a comprehensive economic reform policy known as Vision 2030. And let's take a side tangent here. There's the 2030 again. That number comes up everywhere. You have Agenda 2030, the Vision 2030. You have all types of climate change goals tied to 2030. Everything's tied to 2030. That thing is everywhere. Why is it everywhere? Who knows why they picked that date, but it's got to have some kind of, the elites, the globalists, they're into symbolism. Not sure what it is, but 2030 is the key for all this stuff. It just keeps popping up. It's something I keep seeing, but let's get back on a track here. It says here, the People's Republic regard Vision 2030 as complementary to the Belt and Road Initiative, just like I said. This is his country's, talking about Saudi Arabia, his country's location at the crossroads of Eurasia also make investments there extremely attractive. Opens up a lot for China and Russia. They can take cheap oil products from those countries. I know Russia has their own for that, but they can bring other commodities through there from the Gulf Coast nations. But think of the reverse route, what Russia and China could ship into Saudi Arabia. Very, very opportunistic for Saudi Arabia. Okay, and continuing on now, it says here that China would have to rely on maritime routes under control of the powerful U.S. Navy to facilitate the forthcoming explosion in bilateral real sector trade. But now everything can go over land, basically. As you can see, like I said here, they can just go through land and get to Iran and Saudi Arabia. If you look on this map here, again, China, let's back up, would have to, they have to use these routes here, go through Vietnam, Malaysia, I don't know, cruise through here, Indian Ocean, Arabian Sea, and then come in. Not only is that further, it's controlled by U.S. Navy, although the Chinese Navy is getting pretty big. Some say it's even bigger than the U.S. Navy, but why do that when you can just go across land and you're not going to be stopped? You can avoid all the sanctions by doing that. Much more opportunistic. Then it goes on to say, all this in itself will herald a revolution in geoeconomic affairs, and that's even without Saudi Arabia having to throw its full support behind the petro-yuan. See, that's already becoming a terminology in the media. Petro-yuan, not the petrodollar, the petro-yuan. Once the major oil exporter begins to sell its resources in non-dollar denominated currencies like China's, then the petrodollar, upon which the economic financial aspect of the U.S. unipolar hegemony is predicated on, will be dealt a death blow. That's a short way that's a long way actually, of saying once Saudi Arabia goes, and they already started selling in yuan, but once they start doing that 100%, even for other countries start using the yuan instead of the dollar, that's going to be the death blow. We're already dying over there, but yeah, once that happens, that's going to be the end. And finally, it says here, there's no doubt that upcoming Saudi Arabia moves in support of the petro-yuan that are taking in coordination with Iran and Russia would catalyze the next natural phase of de-dollarization. And that's right. They want to de-dollarize the world. They want to destabilize us, de-dollarize it, come up with their own. And by the way, who's buying all the gold? Russia, India, China, the BRICS nations? Yeah, they're buying tons of gold for their central banks and do basically gold back a reserve currency. The U.S. dollar reserve currency, the U.S. dollar, isn't backed by anything. It's not backed by gold. They say it's backed by the truth, faith, and military might of the United States. Well, as you know, we're in a banking crisis. We're in a war. How much truth, faith is left? How much strength there is there? Well, not much. And it's dropping every day. So there's going to be a lot of countries looking to switch over, go to a new currency, get a backing from an organization like BRICS that will support them and their needs, especially smaller countries, without having a bully tell you what to do, when to do, and have their military in your country to make sure you do it. So just another step towards the financial crisis that we're having in the United States. Once again, I'll bring up to everybody's memory, once there's no more petrodollar and it's not being used in trade, not only for oil, but other goods and services like India and Sri Lanka are trading amongst themselves now, not using the dollar. all those dollars have to come home, and there'll be huge inflation. There's already going to be more inflation coming because of what the FDIC and the Fed did with the bank bailouts. There's like $2 trillion that just hit the Fed's books, and which means a lot more money out there in the system, which means more inflation. It's going to keep going up more until, well, it's probably going to have a currency crash here because it's not backed by anything substantial like gold or silver, which we might eventually get into. That's a video for another day. So that's all I have for this. Like I said, please put in the comments below with what you think about this, the article, if you have questions, anything like that. Until next time, keep your ear to the ground, head on a swivel.